I'm Whitney.
I'm Mindy.
And I'm Deb.
We're three best friends who love nerdy things.
Well, some people think we're nerdy, but we think we're pretty awesome.
This is our nerdiest thing.
Hello, fellow nerds, and welcome to Our Nerdiest Thing. Today, we are finishing our discussion of the fall of the House of Usher, talking about Episode 8, The Raven, and also Edgar Allan Poe's short story, The Cask of Amontillado.
Oh.
I feel like you have to say it fancy when you say it, though. Before we get into all that, Deb, will you please share our nerdiest cocktail?
Sure. Speaking of cocktails, is a cask like a bourbon barrel?
I think so.
Yeah.
Actually? Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
That's what I assumed.
Okay.
That's what I think.
I didn't
If we're
confirm
wrong,
it.
I'm sure someone will tell us.
Yeah.
Tonight's drink is named Nevermore. It's themed after life-ending cocktails. So what you just gave me is going to kill me?
We'll find out.
I guess. Well, no more dick jokes for you. This drink pairs well with dilapidated homes, the worst birthday present ever, and leaving absolutely nothing behind. And it may cause sorrow for the lost Lenore. How dare you? How dare you?
On a better note, a cask is like a barrel.
Okay.
I looked it up.
So for the first time, the three of us are having Amontillado sherry. That is a thing. I like it. Whitney doesn't.
And I
Mindy
still can't drink.
Yeah. Mindy
Womp
is still
womp.
recovering from her surgery, but we'll get her really good and wasted for the next episode. Don't
100%.
you worry.
Oh, man. Yeah.
I'll be a
if you-
lightweight because I haven't drank for
then
like a while.
Whitney, because when she does edits for the producer, she's like, well, why don't you just fix Mindy and Deborah right here?
Help.
If you could get those slurs out, that would be great. We've only had 2 of those in 5 seasons.
I think we're doing pretty good, actually.
We're doing
That's
pretty
just
well, I
like
think.
2% of the time.
They're probably our most listened to episodes, too.
Probably.
We need to run the stats on that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, before we get into anything else, it's time for our final nerdy and dirty recap for this Edgar Allan Poe House of Usher mashup. Although it's not really a mashup, it's just a togetherness. Anyway, whatever.
If anyone else has a better way to put that, just let us know.
Message us. So first, we're going to talk about the Cask of Amontillado. So this episode is called The Raven, but we did The Raven in episode 1, which was also titled after The Raven from the first line of that poem. And this episode focuses heavily on the short story of the Cask of Amontillado. So later in the episode, I'm going to go through a lot of where we see this story pop up in the series, but right now I'm just going to give a summary of the story itself. So in the Cask of Amontillado, we have, of course, a narrator. We do know this narrator's name, Montresor, who hates a man named Fortunato. They seem to be frenemies, where the narrator feels he has been very wronged by Fortunato.
Oh, I love it, enemies to lovers.
Yeah, and has planned revenge against Fortunato, but Fortunato doesn't seem to have any idea that they have a problem with each other, and they seem on friendly terms. So it's carnival time, my favorite time of the year, and Fortunato is dressed up like a jester and ready to party. The narrator lures Fortunato to his house and wine cellar by teasing that he has purchased Amontillado, which is an expensive wine, but that he's not sure it actually is Amontillado and wants somebody to verify that.
Also, is a $20 bottle actually expensive?
It was either 20 or 80, so I went with the 20.
Right. But also, like, this guy's like, I got a $20 bottle down here. What do we do down here?
Well, he has a whole barrel, so that would be expensive, I guess. So he knows, the narrator knows, Fortunato sees himself as a wine connoisseur and would not be able to pass up the opportunity to show off his knowledge. So they go to Montresor's house. They go deep into the cellar, which is also a tomb for the narrator's family, the Montresors. So poor Fortunato, he's got a bad cough, and it's getting worse and worse down in the wet cellar, and our narrator keeps referring to the nitra, which is a mineral that naturally occurs in caves, and it's a fine powder substance. So basically it acts like a respiratory irritant, and it makes you cough because you're breathing it in. So that's what's going on with the constant mentions of the nitra and Fortunato's cough, because that gets mentioned quite a few times.
It does.
So they go down, down, down down some more, deeper into the cellar and / tomb. Fortunato was already drunk when they started this whole endeavor, and the narrator keeps giving him more to drink to supposedly help his cough. So Fortunato's pretty lit by the time they get down.
Fortunato's slurring on the podcast episode right now.
By the time they get to the end of where they're going, he is feeling nice. So they're basically in a cave at this point. They are fully in the tomb part of the cellar where it's cold, dark, the air is much thinner to the point that their torch fire is going out. There's a small alcove area where the narrator points Fortunato over there. That's the Amontillado. And then he traps Fortunato against the rock wall, chains him up, and then builds a wall over the alcove opening while Fortunato screams, tries to escape, assumes it's a joke, and asks a couple of times about like, but what about the Amontillado? Which you just feel bad for him because you're like, dude, there is no Amontillado.
But dude, you promised I'd have a good drink down here.
Yeah, it was a little sad. So the narrator just really ignores him that entire time, keeps building this wall to wall him in, and eventually he leaves Fortunato down in the tomb that he just made with the only sound, the bells from Fortunato's jester costume. And at the end of the story, we find out the narrator is actually telling us this 50 years after it happened, and that nobody has ever found out what he did. And that's how the story ends.
Damn.
I know.
Well, now they all know.
Well, at least whoever he's talking to knows. Yeah. And so that brings us to the episode, The Raven, for Fall of the House of Usher. So this episode is basically all about Roderick and Madeline, but mostly Roderick because they're like the only ones left. So here we go. It serves to basically put all the pieces together and finish out the series and try to answer all of our questions. We start exactly where we left off in the previous episode, with Roderick in the basement of Fortunato alone after Madeline has basically fed him all the alcohol and ligadone to kill himself. And then Verna said, no, and saved him, essentially.
You're awake, motherfucker. Go puke it up.
So at the beginning of this episode, he is awake with Verna, and Verna gives him some stats about how many deaths Ligadone has caused and says she has some more transactions to make before she can see him again, which is not concerning at all. We see Madeline and Arthur have fully pushed Roderick out as CEO, and Madeline is replacing him. Lenore stands up to Arthur and refuses to lie to protect her dad's memory when the police show up at their house for her mom, which we love, a badass moment. And in present time of Roderick and August talking, they finally talk about Annabelle. So it's revealed that Roderick saw Annabelle at the funeral earlier, which was Tamerlane and Freddie's funeral, which that makes sense because they're Annabelle's kids. Basically, what we find out happened.
Do you think he actually saw her?
What do you mean?
I thought it was a vision.
Well, I don't think she's alive. And
No, she's dead. She's just like the other ghosts.
Okay, so she's a ghost. Okay.
I was getting there.
Sorry.
Yeah, but no, he actually...
Damn, Mindy.
Sorry.
He actually saw her, but not her like living live body place.
Gotcha. I was like, there's no way she's alive because when she turns around, she's pretty dead.
No, she's not. She's not alive.
We're anything but smooth. This is a nerd podcast.
So we find out that what happened is Annabelle left Roderick after all that Fortunato junk where he lied under oath and did not do any of the things that he and August had been prepping for. She got full custody of the kids, which basically Roderick's ego couldn't handle that. So he bought their affection and took them away from Annabelle with his wealth. Roderick says he choked every part of Annabelle out of Tamerlane and Freddie with his money, and Annabelle could not live without them. And when we see her talking to Roderick at the funeral, we see from the back of her head, I think we're supposed to assume died by suicide based on everything that he says. That's never explicitly said, but that's the obvious.
That was one of my questions.
I think it's something that Mike Flanagan does confirm that she dies from.
How do you think she did? Because it looked like she had blunt force trauma to the back of the head.
I think it's supposed to be a gunshot.
That's what I think too. But I also thought that was kind of strange to not have anything from the front.
Yeah.
But I think that's what
that
we're
wouldn't have
supposed
been
to
good
assume.
television.
No, it would not.
Well, yeah, that's true.
You know.
Yeah. So in a beautiful speech to Roderick, Annabelle / her ghost basically gives him a really big screw you and tells him that for all his money and accomplishments, her kids withered and died because of the poverty of Roderick, which I really loved that line. And finally, Roderick tells August about the night of New Year's Eve, 1979. Fortunato is having a big costume party where I knew this was coming. Rufus was dressed up as a jester. So here we go, everybody. He and the Fortunato bigwigs are thrilled with Roderick because of his defending the company in his deposition. Madeline lures Rufus to the basement of the construction zone of their new building to allegedly have sex. But
well, no, she calls it fucking.
Well,
she's like, if you can walk to me, you can fuck
that's
me.
what he thinks is going to happen. But Madeline had no such plans. She drugs his drink, and she and Roderick chain Rufus to a pipe and seal him up into the wall with a final brick that Madeline has written, "You are so small," which is the same insult Annabelle said to her in the previous episode. So that
did not catch that.
That must have left a mark on Madeline because she used it on somebody else. So I thought that was pretty interesting detail. So then we see them at the bar talking to Verna, where she essentially lays out this deal that they end up making with her. I can give you everything you want, all the money, all the power, and no legal consequences for any of your actions. And I'll even defer the payment to later. You don't have to pay me anything now. Your bloodline will have to pay it later. And she explicitly says, right before Roderick would die anyway, all of his bloodline will die, and then him. He gets a long life of wealth and success. Sounds great. Roderick says he has no line, no limit to what he will do to get ahead, and he and Madeline take the deal, and they drink to it with Verna, the same expensive liquor that Roderick offered August in episode 1. And when Madeline and Roderick leave the bar, it immediately disappears, and they both chalk it up to a weird drunk dream and forget about it? Question mark? I don't buy that explanation.
Wow, the bar disappeared. We must have just been drunk.
Yeah, we had like a shared drunk illusion.
I've never been that high or drunk to be like, the building disappeared. It's fine. It's fine.
I don't buy that at all. So we cut to Arthur catching up to Verna at the childhood home where he tries to kill Verna, but of course she's not a human, so that doesn't work. She offers him a deal to keep him, Arthur, out of legal trouble as all this crap is about to hit the fan. And he really surprises me by saying, no thanks, I don't have anything to offer you. Basically, I have nothing to give a deal with. I'll take my cards and I'll just see what happens. So I guess go Arthur, ? And then we cut to Lenore, our sweet, sweet Lenore. She is Roderick's bloodline, even though I really wanted Robbie to be right that she wasn't actually Freddie's biological daughter. But alas, she was. So she is included in this death deal. But Verna is really sweet to Lenore and not only gives her a quick and peaceful death, but she also tells her what will happen for her mother in the future, where her mom takes all the trauma that's happened to her and turns it into a foundation to help others and ends up saving millions of people's lives. So then we get the reveal that all these text messages Lenore sending Roderick is in fact AI Lenore. Everyone, golf claps for Whitney.
Algorithm. That we still don't know what she was talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And all the texts say the same word over and over again. Nevermore. We see Roderick finding Lenore's body in this really cool sequence where he lives out the Raven poem and is haunted by Lenore's ghost and an actual raven. And then we get to what is going on with Madeline in the basement. So she came to have a drink with Roderick. They have a nice little we're about to die chat. And then we see that he has drugged her drink, trying to poison and kill her, and then he mummifies her. So everything he's been setting up in the basement has been for Madeline, for a tomb fit for a goddess. Except that she wasn't actually dead, apparently. And just like their mom comes back from being not dead, almost dead,
wakes up
mostly dead. I don't know. It's like the Princess Bride. I'm not really sure what's going on. All the banging around has been her trying to figure out what's going on and find the stairs, because Roderick, while mummifying her, gouged her eyes out and replaced them with those pretty sapphires from a couple episodes back. So that's horrifying. She finally makes it up the stairs, chokes Roderick, and as the house starts falling down around them, August gets the hell out.
He's like, well, see ya.
And I'm out. I've stayed for this whole crazy story, but mummified sister coming up from the basement is like, that's my line.
That's my limit.
That's my limit. And so he turns around as the house falls and sees Verna on top of the pile of rubble when the house is fully demolished. We see Juno inherits everything and uses it to help others instead of hoarding wealth for herself. Arthur is the only conviction from all the crimes of Fortunato, and August is the only person besides Verna who goes to visit the Usher family graves, where August says he is actually the richest man in the world because of his family at home. Aw, isn't that nice?
Aw, Augie.
And that's the end of the fall of the House of Usher. Whew. There's a lot of things that happened.
A lot to unpack in there.
And episode's done.
All right, bye.
Just kidding. Please don't go. Yeah. We really need you here and want you here.
Yeah. Before we get into the details of all of those details, Mindy, will you please share our nerdiest vocabulary?
I will, and I'm just going to keep it light for this episode since there was a lot to unpack. Going back to the weird shared dream, Roderick calls it a folie à deux, and I just thought it was really interesting. Like, that's what they said that they think their encounter with Verna is, but it literally translates to madness of two, which I think is really a cool way to say that.
Even like though mass hysteria, but just for two people.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what they called the second Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga.
They were like, well, no one's going to watch this, so makes it
I didn't know that's what it meant. I assumed that it meant like part 2.
Too funny. And then finally, just a reminder, going back to our first episode of this, that Verna is an anagram for raven. And in Poe's poem, The Raven, he writes that the raven's eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming. That's a line in The Raven, which I thought was really cool and really kind of...
One of my big questions is like, what is Verna? Because no one ever confirms, like the showrunners or anything. But like, is she the Grim Reaper? Is she a Crossroads demon? Is she the devil? Like
she
what
feels
is she?
Very Crossroads demon to
I
me.
think she's either a demon or the devil.
Yeah,
right.
Especially after that city by the sea, whatever that we talked about.
Right.
Maybe she's the queen of the Crossroads.
Maybe.
Shout out to Crowley from Supernatural.
Crowley's queen, maybe.
She would not bow down and have a king. I'm sorry.
No, she would not. Well, let's go into our favorite moments. There were a lot of good moments in this episode, honestly.
I have 3.
Oh, well, maybe you go first.
I couldn't narrow it down.
Keeping it old school.
I know, right? Kicking it way back.
I have 24.
The one thing, okay, so these are all really kind of small moments, but the biggest one is when Verna tricks Pym into thinking that he actually killed her, and then she just steps on the bag. I loved that moment. That was like a big fuck you, right? And then I thought it was as horrifying and like kind of disgusting as it was, the visual of all the bodies raining down that showed Roderick's death toll.
I hate to say it was beautiful, but it really was.
It was poetic and powerful. There was something about that cinematography, and it just kept getting more and more and more as she talked. That was just a crazy good cinematography moment. But I think probably my like top one is the line where Verna basically tells Pym that she made a deal with Trump, and then Pym asks when that deal is over.
If anyone could let us know, that'd be great.
I just thought that was an interesting throw in there.
And this show was made in 2021.
Yes.
Yeah. And we live in the hell timeline in 2020.
Yeah, apparently someone did not go well with their deal with Verna, and that's why we're in the state we're in.
That's my soul screaming into the void. What was your favorite moment, Deb?
Well, you touched on this in your recap, and I hate that Lenore doesn't survive, but finding out through Verna that Lenore actually saves 3 million people by saving her mother, I cried. I cried when I was writing my notes for this.
Me too.
I mean, Maury uses her entire inheritance, which we know is like a fucking fortune, right? And starts the Lenore Foundation for domestic abuse survivors. And I just think that was a really special tie-in, because Verna's like, look, dude, I really don't want to do this. So I need you to know that what you did was really, really great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I love Verna as a character, because she, I mean, basically is the devil and is like one of the best.
Right. And
like,
has more of a conscience than
everybody else.
Lenore.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Juno. Juno's got a conscience
100%. Yeah. Well, my favorite moment was the whole sequence where Roderick lives out the Raven poem. I thought that was really, really well done. And like you just said, Deb, I hated that Lenore died, but the way that Mike Flanagan works the poem into this episode, I thought felt very like natural and organic, and it was really beautiful. That scene made me cry. And the dark lighting and the actual Raven being inside the house, Roderick being racked by grief, having that actually be believable and not just like, oh, it's time for the Raven, like here's a weird bird. Like it really worked. And I thought it was really, really well done.
It just showed us his even deeper level of psychosis, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, I really liked that a lot. I thought that was great. That was definitely my favorite part. What about your least favorite part?
Mine isn't actually a downer. Well, I mean, it is, but it's more of an upper, and you'll get why I'm saying this. So, do you remember when Madeline says that the Pentagon spends $84 million a year on Viagra?
Yeah.
It's true.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So some of it goes to active duty military, but mostly it goes to the family members and retired people covered under the military's insurance. So I just want to point out that if the entire world put more emphasis on women's pleasure, the world would be a better place. Have you ever heard happy wife, happy life? Like, you don't have to be married. You can fuck anytime you want as long as you're a consenting adult. But
make her come. Don't be a bum.
And I'm not going to say anything else. I can't follow that up. $84 million on Viagra.
That is crazy.
The Pentagon. I'm just saying. Yeah, that was my least favorite part.
That I thought about looking it up, and then I was like, I'm just going to make me mad.
It did make me mad.
What was your least favorite moment, Mindy?
When the jester jump scared me. No, I'm just kidding.
It did.
I mean, it really did scare me. It really did get me. But I think I don't know, like this whole time I've kind of been on the fence about Pym. Like I get like he's doing what he's been asked to do. And like, I know he's not a moral person, but I kind of wanted to like him. But when he tried to get Lenore to change her statement and go along with, the company line, it really pissed me off.
And then Lenore was like, fuck you.
I know, which I love that came out. I love that she was like, no. Yeah,
I hated that, especially in those circumstances. Like the crap is hitting the fan in general, right? Like these are very extenuating circumstances, and this is a horrific thing that has happened to this girl's mom. Like,
because she's what, 15?
She's a teenager, and I'm just like, dude, I mean, I don't even feel like it's have a heart. It's like we need Camille's PR brain here,
right?
To like, this is not how you deal with these situations, right?
But it
Camille's
also just dead. Thanks for bringing it up, though.
Well, that just proves too that he has nothing like that in his life,
right?
To be empathetic.
But I also think that he is
true.
arrogant enough to think that he doesn't need collateral because nothing's going to happen to him. Like the ushers have him, like he is indestructible. Even if they die, he's indestructible. But
see, I didn't take it like that. I took it as like a sad, I don't have anything.
Oh,
like I don't
really?
have anything to offer you.
I saw it as arrogance.
His whole life is them.
Yeah,
and that job, and that's the only thing that I have.
And now prison. That really sucks,
and
bro.
if they're going away, I literally don't have anything.
Yeah.
My least favorite moment was Lenore's death. Just like you were saying a couple of minutes ago, Deb. Like I really loved the way that Verna comes across in that whole scene. I thought that was really interesting character development, but I hate that it happened at all. And like I said, I really was hoping Robbie was right and that somehow he had looked up, spoilers or something, but alas, it was not to be.
We have to remember though that Mike Flanagan almost kills everybody.
Well, honestly,
every time.
I feel like I would have been a little disappointed in Mike Flanagan, because I would have felt that was not what he would usually. It would be very uncharacteristic of him.
I want to point out, too, if you're an episode listener, jump arounder, Mike Flanagan is the showrunner. I feel like we keep saying his name, but
we do.
If you didn't listen to the last couple episodes.
Who's this Mike guy?
Right.
Yeah, but that scene was really, really well done, and I really loved seeing Verna's compassion for Lenore and the very obvious vibe of, like, I really don't want to do this, but it's part of the deal, so I have to. And she even says, I think, to Lenore, like, they knew what the terms were. I told them very clearly this is what was going to happen, and they made the deal anyway. And it's like she's almost disappointed in Roderick and Madeline for making the deal in the first place, which kind of confuses me. I would love a whole like side show about
Verna's transactions.
Yes,
that would be amazing.
Where'd she come
from?
What
a great series.
I would really enjoy that a lot.
How did she become the queen of hell?
What's her story, her villain origin story? What about biggest revelation?
Go ahead, man.
I was gonna say mine was the AI Lenore, because
not very good AI.
I know, weirdo. But I even when you said that, I had not remembered. This is how bad my mind is, guys. So, and actually I did watch this one while I was on some medication. So But yes, I had not remembered. So when that came up, and I'd forgotten about the whole Nevermore tie-in. I mean, it was just a cool, like, that was a cool moment.
I really enjoyed the Nevermore tie-in.
It was a very goth girl episode.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was.
That's true.
What was yours, Whitney?
I actually have two biggest revelations. So one is what happened with Annabelle, which I just found really heartbreaking. It made a lot of sense because she clearly was not part of their life. So I figured that meant she was dead. Plus, her name was Annabelle Lee. So based on Edgar Allan Poe's work, I figured that she was dead. But she was just so good to Roderick, and she was clearly a good mom to Tamerlane and Freddie. And Roderick just took them and was very callous with his treatment of his kids and his treatment of her, with no regard for her as a person at all, even as the mother of his kids, right? Like sometimes people split up, but they're able to still have an amicable relationship because they see each other as like, you're the other parent of my children.
Roderick wanted it all for himself.
Exactly.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything in his life he needed to control.
Too narcissistic. And she was just another piece of collateral damage in this family. And that just is a big bummer. But the other big revelation that I had is how Madeline is repeating the history of her mom. So both of them were mistaken for dead, or came back to life for a brief moment in time. Buried alive. And both of them fought their way out of the grave. And their last moments were spent choking the life out of a powerful man.
Yeah.
Both of them did that. And I really, really loved that
Both
symmetry.
of them choked the life out of the head of Fortunato.
Yeah, that's true.
Not just a powerful man.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. But I really, really liked that repeating history, even though they seem like complete opposites in terms of their personality and their character. Based on the little bit that we saw of the mom, they don't seem to have really any similarities except for that, which is a pretty big one.
I will say too, this was something that just occurred to me when Verna, I think, says something about it, that basically it made me feel for Madeline a little bit more to know that she's, regardless of how much power she wanted to get, she's still tied to Roderick because of this deal. Like she's always been, tied to him and tied to a man in some way, or got what she has from a man. And so that made me be a little more sympathetic to her, even though she is a huge bitch. But I don't know. When I look at it that way,
I don't like kill people.
Exactly. Yeah. Or like step all over everybody and like.
Well, I do sometimes, but I don't mean to. Sorry.
Yeah, that's the great irony of Madeline's part in this deal, because she said several episodes ago she told Verda what she really wanted was for a man to not have any power over her. And then she's tied to Roderick and anything that Roderick does for the rest of their lives, and so
including
it's like
death.
But let's be honest, she wanted to be tied to Roderick.
Well, yeah, because she was doing him.
Right.
That is not canon of the show, but it is canon of this podcast.
In an article I read, though, one of them did say, like, it's talks about the fall of the House of Usher and what happens when you have an incestuous relationship. So, I mean, it's like, it's very, I think, canonically they were they at least kissed.
The signs are there. The signs are there.
She, this whole like, oh, it was a dream, I don't think it was really real, but she went ahead and got a hysterectomy. Or was that what she got?
She made
got an IUD.
IUD, that's what it was.
She said,
she made
sure did enough to make sure I did not have kids.
Like, okay.
I thought was really interesting. Robbie pointed that out too, and he was like, based on what we've seen of her and Roderick, it would have seemed the opposite, that she would be the one that would just willy-nilly.
But boys will be boys, and you just needed to fuck.
But I was like, well, she would not want to be pregnant, right? Like she wouldn't care about the kid and would just give them to a nanny or something.
Right.
But then she would still have had to deal with like being pregnant and literally giving birth. But I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, because of that, not wanting to deal with pregnancy and stuff, wouldn't you have probably gotten an IUD and not had kids anyway?
Probably.
You know what I mean? Like,
probably.
She doesn't seem like she would have been like, yes, I would like kids if they hadn't made this deal.
Right.
Maybe I'm making assumptions and I should check my bias. I don't know. She didn't seem very maternal. Can I just give myself one more shout out, because I forgot to do it a second ago, for guessing that the text messages were from AI Lenore and not real Lenore? I was really excited about that. Like,
that was one thing I did not figure out when I was watching.
I didn't either. Either time, I was like, apparently.
God, level 10 cleaner. Why do you keep texting him?
Just like chill. What were your all's favorite tie-in to the original story, whether you did the Raven poem or Cask of Amontillado?
Well, mine was very obvious about the Cask of Amontillado. In this story, we actually see the downfall of Fortunato, who's a person, due to being drunk on his pride, which definitely happens in the show. We also see Fortunato in the story wearing a jester costume, which we know is symbolic of being a fool. Yeah. And of course, in this story, it's all about like secrets and murderous revenge. Mm-hmm. And I want to call out that the sherry that Madeline feeds Rufus is the name brand Amontillado, which I really loved. And then that's what we're drinking tonight. Yeah. That's the $20 sherry, friends, not the $80 sherry.
Yes.
Yeah, so mine was very literal, but I felt like this episode stayed pretty close to the story.
It did. It really did. Mindy, what was your favorite tie-in?
I liked the tie-in that went through the whole series of the bell ringing, that audio cue. And then actually something hit me when you were doing your deep dive on the Cask of Amontillado, when he's in there going, hey, but what about the Amontillado? And he's just... And Rufus does it. He's like, wait, you're not serious, right?
Yeah.
You're not serious? Are you all serious? And they're like, yes, we are.
This is after he threatens to cut them up and feed them.
I know.
Yeah.
To like themselves? Is that what he said?
I think so.
Right, yeah.
It was something gross.
And then he offers to give them $3 million each, which in 1979 was probably a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
I mean it is now too, but
yeah.
I think some people are like, oh, $3 million, not us.
Yeah.
I did like
I'll take it.
I did like too when Madeline says that Rufus wouldn't know the difference between sherry and Amontillado, because they say that, and he says that about that other guy. He's like, I'm going to go get this other guy to tell me if this is Amontillado, and he keeps saying it, and the guy's like, no, he wouldn't know.
He's an
sherry.
idiot. Let me do it for you. Yeah. Just the fall of pride. Well, one tie-in that I already mentioned was my favorite moment, the tie-in of the Raven poem. I thought that was really great, but I really loved all the Easter eggs for the Cask of Amontillado. So I did a little deep dive into all the ways we see the Cask of Amontillado in this episode, but also throughout the entire series. So first, and maybe most obviously, you've got Fortunato, like you were just saying, Deb. In the story, Fortunato is a frenemy who has wronged the narrator in lots of small ways, and then apparently in one big, unforgivable way that finally spurs the narrator to seek revenge and get rid of Fortunato once and for all. And of course, in the show, Fortunato is the company Roderick and Madeline eventually take over, and the company is their frenemy for sure. Their biological father is the CEO until their mom kills him, and then it's their careers and their livelihoods, but they work at the bottom of the ladder and are mistreated by Rufus and the higher ups at every turn. And finally, those insults become too much for Roderick and Madeline to take, and they get their revenge. In the final episode, we see Juno dissolving Fortunato and its assets, taking down the entire company the same way Fortunato, the character, was taken down in the story. And in this final episode, of course, you have basically, like you just said, Deb, the plot of the Cask of Amontillado. It's the big party, Rufus dressed as the jester, they offer him the Amontillado wine. Madeline lures him down to the basement, where they chain him up, build the wall to bury him alive, and they leave him there with only the sound of the bells, which is exactly how the narrator leaves Fortunato in the short story. And at the end of the short story, the narrator tells us this murder happened 50 years ago and no one ever found out. And that's the same time frame for Roderick telling this story to August.
It's going to be really shocking when they tear that building down.
Somebody at some point is going to be like, oh, good God.
Well, here's the thing, though, because it's in the basement and the way they demolish buildings, they may not even notice.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
Yeah. That is true. So we've been seeing references to the Cask of Amontillado throughout the entire series. Some of these we've mentioned before in our previous episodes, but here are several of them. So the entire opening of the series we talked about in our episode 1 with the Pink Floyd song, Another Brick in the Wall, which of course is a reference to walling up Rufus and Fortunato being walled up in the short story. We've seen over and over again Roderick coming to the Fortunato basement and just like staring at the wall like a weirdo. This is a reference to the Rufus skeleton, I guess, that's still chained up to the pipes in there and coming back to his scene of the crime. We've had multiple jump scares with the jester appearing to Roderick, and now we know that that's Rufus's ghost appearing to him. He hears bells, especially when he's down in the basement staring at the wall, which is a reference not just to the jester costume, but also the short story. The narrator leaves Fortunato quiet and hearing only the sound of the bells on his costume. And throughout the series, we have seen this cognac that Roderick is drinking. It's the super expensive liquor that Verna Verna gives Roderick and Madeline to seal their deal at her bar, and Roderick offers some to August in the very first episode. And either Verna said this or Roderick said this, that this cognac is the kind of drink you have either on the best day of your life or your last night on Earth. And this is a double reference, right? So one, this is a reference to the Amontillado in the short story, which is supposed to be rare and expensive and is how the narrator lures Fortunato in the first place. But it's also a reference to the Poe toaster, which I did not know that this was a thing.
That you make toast with?
No, this is a person. A name given to an anonymous person or persons who for 100 years left 3 red roses and a bottle of cognac on Poe's grave on his birthday. Every year for 100 years. Did you talk about this in the first
No, but
episode,
I had read about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't think I've heard this. And then I got nervous that you told us.
No, but I had read about it in one of my things and didn't have a place to talk about it.
Yeah. So this drink is, the cognac is a reference to the Poe toaster that does this or did this in real life. It seems like they don't anymore, ? Or because it's been more than 100 years since he died. So I'm not 100% sure about the timeline there. But apparently people would come and watch this ritual, but not try to reveal the identity of whoever did it, which I think is really cool. Like it became a crowd thing and they still like respected the game, which I thought was really cool. So this is not actually from the Cask of Amontillado, but I did find this in my research and I thought this was cool. So I found Mike Flanagan, the showrunner, did a movie called Oculus that focuses heavily on the Lasser glass, which is a mirror that when you look at it, it turns you homicidal or suicidal. Ooh. And this mirror is featured in all of Mike Flanagan's shows and movies. And in The Fall of the House of Usher, it's in the background at Verna's bar. When Roderick and Madeline are sitting at the bar talking to Verna, it's way behind them in the background against the wall. And so it's supposed to foreshadow the death that's coming, basically.
Well, now I want to watch that movie. Oculus
is what it's called. Yeah. So I thought that was a neat little tidbit. And then last but not least, this is also not from the Cask of Amontillado, but I read that Freddie's fear of elevators that we've talked about a lot, his fear of elevators is supposed to be about claustrophobia, not elevators themselves, which is a reference to the narrator of The Pit and the Pendulum, which is his episode.
Oh, okay.
Which I had not seen that in the research that I did for that episode, but that made sense.
That makes so
and
much sense.
And we were like, what's up with the elevator?
Like they never answered that.
Yeah, it seems like such a random detail, but of course
it is something
wasn't.
that maybe needed to be fleshed out.
I know, right?
More.
Maybe a little
They bring
clearer.
it up too many times.
Yeah. It felt like one of those, like, if you're really smart, you'll get this. And if you're not, you don't deserve to get it. You know what I mean? Whatever, guys. But that is the Cask of Amontillado with this show. So lots of cool little tidbits there.
Very cool.
Well, it's interesting because my episode MVP actually has to do with something about you saying they put the roses and the cognac on his grave.
Oh.
This is a little bit, I didn't realize this was probably a shout out to that. So my episode MVP is Verna. And you mentioned this earlier. We see the vengeful side of Verna, but we also see her pain in this episode when she has to kill Lenore. Like, she is very upset about this, right? Like, she knows that Lenore has not done anything, but it's part of the deal, right? Yeah. So we see her visit the cemetery and place something on each Usher grave. So now I'm kind of seeing that connection between what you just said. So it's a mask for Prospero, a smartphone for Camille, a cat collar for Napoleon, the heart device for Victorine, a gold bug pin for Tamerlane, drugs for Frederick.
I know.
That made me laugh.
What the fuck else did he accomplish in this, right? Sapphires for Madeline, and a cognac glass for Roderick. And we see Verna give a gift without any strings attached, and that was the raven feather for Lenore.
Yeah.
Because she just really, I think, loved Lenore and, like, well, maybe not love, but you know what I mean? Like, felt very, very bad about having to kill her. So I just loved the intelligence behind that whole scene of her being like, it sucks to suck, but also, like, this does suck for your family.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and those are all the things that killed them, right? So, like, the toast, the cognac making the deal is ultimately what led to Roderick's demise. And Verna is the reason that Lenore died, too. I thought that was really cool. I didn't think about that, even though I knew about the Poe toaster. I didn't think about that until you just said it just now.
I know. I didn't know about the Poe toaster. I thought you were talking about, like, a toaster that, like, put his face on the bread or something.
Which now somebody has to make.
I'm sure it's out there. Probably.
Yeah, that's $1 million idea idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right
Someone that makes po' boy sandwiches is thought about doing that.
And if not, we should start.
We just made our millions, folks.
Yeah. Well, my episode MVP was Verna, and giving mercy to Lenore is a huge reason why I loved that. Just like you just said, putting all the things that killed them on their graves. I loved that detail. And I kind of love that she doesn't actually do anything to Madeline or Roderick necessarily to kill them.
She doesn't have to.
She doesn't have to. Yeah. I love that. I find that really like poetic justice, that they really are the cause of their own demise, right? They are the reason for everything. Neither of them seem to have learned a single freaking thing.
No, they did not.
They didn't grow at all in any way, shape, or form. They don't really seem to have any kind of remorse. And Roderick trying to poison her and her choking Roderick to death is just perfect to me. Like they're supposed to love each other so much. They're like obsessed with each other. They're so codependent. And then at the same time are very toxic to each other.
But also they think if one of them goes, the other will survive. So like how much do they actually love each other?
That's true. Yeah, that is true. Verna is such a compelling character for me. I loved her.
Were they
every
twins?
step. I think they were supposed to be.
She said you all came in the same time.
Yeah.
So I think they're supposed to be twins.
They are they twins in the story? Follow the House of Usher story?
I don't know.
They are.
No, they're siblings. Are they twins?
There's a twin aspect to it. Basically, the whole interaction between Dupin and Roderick is sort of how Fall of the House of Usher is. The house was the antagonist. It was the reason for all the madness.
Right.
And so the end of Fall of the House of Usher is the frenemy guy getting out as it falls and tumbles. Yeah. So it's very similar to that whole interaction.
Did you share your episode MVP?
No.
Andy?
Mine's actually Juno. I just
she was a close second for me.
She just comes out on top. I just think that's such justice for Juno.
Yeah.
So she inherits everything. Which I gotta say, I know they say that like Pym's the only one that had to like basically answer for all that stuff, but I'm sure there was something that they had to pay out for Fortunato.
Reparations
or something. Yeah,
I would assume so.
I don't know. They said like nothing that had to do with Fortunato would ever go like get
true. Yeah, I don't know.
Criminal prosecution.
Anyway,
so
more money for Juno. That's okay.
Yay.
But then she actually does wean herself off of Ligodone, so that just shows like she's persistent and just really she's just great. I love her. She actually changes the world with her foundation, so she's the complete opposite of the Ushers, right? And I wanted to see if there were any other like really cool stories about people who inherited money and did great things with it.
Oh yay.
Yeah, I didn't find any of those.
I was like, are we about to see the good in the world? Apparently not.
Actually, some of these are really good, but I did find several very crazy inheritance stories, like people that put in their will really crazy stipulations.
Ooh.
So we're going to start with Charles Vance Miller. He was a lawyer and a financier in Toronto, and he was also like a renowned practical joker. He had several odd stipulations in his will, such as giving a vacation home in Jamaica to 3 men who hated each other with the condition that they live in the condo together forever. He gave brewery stock to a group of Protestant ministers who obviously don't drink, as long as they participate in the operations and collect dividends from these brewery stocks.
Oh.
And did the same thing with hockey club stocks to a group of anti-horse racing advocates. Oh. So he was just like, kind of like, I'm going to get you. But the most famous...
Screw you.
This one actually is kind of cool, though. The most famous stipulation he had, and it's known as the Great Stork Derby. He gave a very large portion of his estate to the woman in Toronto who had the most babies in the decade following his death.
And who was that? Do you know?
4 women split the inheritance. They all had 9 children each. So they each got
27 children.
So they each got $110,000. And before you think like that's not worth it, this was in the 1920s and would be about $2.24 million today.
Each?
Yes.
Christ.
It's still not worth it for 9
babies. That's where Whitney draws the line. 8 maybe, but 9. Oh,
but did they have 9 babies specifically to win this money?
Yes. They absolutely did.
Wow, that's crazy.
My uterus can't handle that.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I just felt mine wither up.
I don't even have one, so
My sanity can't handle that.
There's no way.
No.
That's crazy.
So this one's really weird too. So Nina Wang, she was diagnosed with cancer, and at that time she changed her will to leave her. She's like the richest woman in China, I think. And she left her vast fortune to a feng shui master named Tony Chan, who sounds like a real legit guy, right?
he sounds like he would make an infomercial about feng shui.
Or about a pawn shop or something.
Yeah.
He owns the ShamWow company.
Yeah.
So she left her fortune to this Tony Chan guy in exchange for a promise of eternal life.
Oh my gosh.
So she dies a year later, right? So Tony gets the money because she died, but he told her she could have eternal life. That's just so weird. This makes no sense to me
It
because
was a metaphor?
I don't know, because if Chan promised her eternal life, then she would never die and he would never get the money. So like, why would he even be like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that? Probably because he knew she was going to die. But like, they were both really dumb
In the
to make
Christian
that
faith,
deal.
you technically have
That's
eternal
what-
life.
Yeah.
But
Like
that has
an
nothing to do with
afterlife?
Tony Chan.
I know. Yeah. I just thought that was a really weird.
That is weird.
That was a really dumb thing for her to do.
Yeah, Nina girl.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
You a fool.
Yeah, R.I.P.
So next we have a Portuguese aristocrat named, okay, I'm going to get this wrong, Luis Carlos de Noronha Cabral da Camara.
Oh.
He,
God bless you.
Yeah, no kidding. Distributed his fortune to 70 people that he just chose randomly from a Lisbon phone book.
Oh.
Can you imagine getting that phone call though? Like, I would totally think someone was scamming me. They were like, "Hey,
100%.
dude just gave you like all this money."
Well, because today they would be scamming us.
At 100%.
But I'm like, okay, I'm not giving my bank account number, but I'll meet you at the bank.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just thought that, I mean, what a cool like philanthropic thing to do,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
also just kind of,
Strange.
yeah, odd.
That also means he probably really hated the people around him.
That's what I was just
Well, I was just going to say, like, maybe he didn't have any friends or his family didn't. I don't know. Very strange.
curious.
Next, we have billionaire Leona Helmsley. She was famous. She's a famous hotelier, I think. And she left $12 million to her dog, Trouble,
Oh, Lord.
which is more than she gave most of her human descendants.
What's a dog going to do with the solid 12 mil?
As an added insult, she left the care of the dog and his millions to her brother, who only inherited $10 million.
Oh, man.
Still less than the dog.
But like, does the dog have a bank account? Doesn't the 12
Probably.
technically go to the brother? Like, or is it like a trust where you can only buy like dog beds?
Yeah.
You can stipulate, like,
Yeah.
it is in a trust, and you can also put somebody in charge of the trust that,
That
has to
also
approve
shows
every purchase.
that I have no wealth because I don't understand this.
No.
Yeah.
I had one of my cousins, her parents were split, and her dad had cancer and passed away, and he stipulated in his will that like his ex-wife could not have any say in her inheritance at all. So
Oh, wow.
other family members had to be in charge of
Oh, wow.
A little pissed of
approving.
the ex-wife, aren't you?
Yeah, it's a whole. I could do a whole
Yikes.
podcast episode about it. But yeah, you can be very specific with
Yeah.
like this person is in charge and they have to approve every single purchase.
Yeah.
And to approve the purchase, it has to fall under like these guidelines. It's very intense. It can be. I don't think I'd do that for my dog though. I'm gonna be honest.
I mean, I love my animals, but no.
I know I love my
I don't have
dog,
any pets, so
but I would not. Sorry, Chewy.
Yeah.
can you guys leave me 12 million?
Right? Yeah. Like Puppy Chow is just fine. You don't need $12 million.
I'll build the Whitney and Mindy Library Foundation. We'll rival Dolly Parton with the amount of books I give away.
That sounds
How's that?
amazing, actually.
That would be great. Let's do that.
This last one's kind of sad though, so I don't know why I don't know why I did this one.
Can't
last.
wait.
There was a homeless man in Bolivia named Tomas Martinez, and he was supposed to inherit $6 million from his ex-wife. She didn't I don't know, they broke up because he was like addicted to drugs and alcohol, and he ended up homeless, but she never had bad feelings towards them or whatever. So when she died, she left him $6 million. But when the police came to give him the news of the inheritance, he fled because he thought they were about to get him for drug and alcohol use.
Aww.
And they never got to tell him, and he was never found.
Oh no.
This was in 2000. So, I mean, he may still be out there and not know he has an inheritance.
If you're listening,
wow.
Yeah.
you have an inheritance.
I wonder what happens in a situation like that.
I don't
Where
know.
like one person is left the inheritance, but if you can't contact that one person, like what happens to
I don't
that
know.
money? You know, like, does it just sit in an account forever and ever and ever?
I wish I knew wealthy enough people to be able to tell you.
Listeners, let us know.
Yeah.
What's the procedure
All of
here?
our very wealthy listeners.
Oh, man. Well, Mindy, why don't you just keep us going with your favorite secondary character?
I had trouble picking this one, too. Honorable mention first to Verna for telling Lenore about her mother, which you all both talked about. But my favorite secondary characters are Lenore and Morella. Because Lenore really is the best of them, as Roderick keeps saying, and she really wanted to start doing good in the world. That was her last, basically her last conversation with Roderick was like, let's turn this around and do something good. And then Morella goes out and does that.
Does it, yeah. I liked that a lot too. I also had a really hard time choosing a secondary character because I didn't know if I wanted to choose the character because of the character, like Lenore, or because of the acting.
Right.
And I ultimately went for the acting. So I went with Roderick. Not Tom Skerritt. He had a lot to do in this episode.
He did.
And I thought he did a really good job from an acting perspective. He had to mourn Lenore, be mostly stoic with maybe a little bit of remorse, but also not caring so much when Madeline realizes that he poisoned her, not letting the noise downstairs get to him, even though, like, hey, shouldn't she be dead? Like, what's going on?
He could have been like, I'll be right back.
I know.
And
That's
just
so
I wonder if he just
me.
thought it was her ghost and it was just messing with him.
I guess.
Maybe.
And just the overall insanity that he has to display without being like really obvious about it. I feel like he had a really difficult job as an actor in this episode, and I thought he was great. And not just in this one episode, but throughout the whole series.
Yeah.
He is really good. Maybe this is my fatal flaw, but I think he's really good at being charming and likable, even though you know that
He's not a
shouldn't
good
be.
person.
Yes,
Yes.
like he should not be likable at all, and he still charms me.
Yeah.
Which
especially in the
concerning.
Especially in the younger episodes, because I don't even when he like throws Dupin in the bus, I'm like, oh, that wasn't a very smart move. But the moment I realized that he really was just like
evil,
a bad person,
was when he took that deal and he was like, I don't have any.
I don't care if you kill my family.
That was a big
especially
struggle
because
for
he
me.
already had two kids that were alive. It wasn't like they were like his future children that he hadn't thought about.
That is so insane to me. Yeah, that I just wow.
Just shows how broken he was.
Yeah. He always.
How
was
do you
a bad
stay
person.
up with the kid at night when they're sick and then be like, well, if they die in 40 years, it'll be fine.
Whatever.
They were going to die anyway.
That's just.
Which is kind of what Verna says. They're going to die anyway.
Yeah.
Might as well just let me kill him.
Okay.
Horrifically.
Yeah. What about you?
Well,
Deb?
mine was Madeline, and it's, several reasons that we've already talked about. We learned that she had an IUD put in, which I put means that she put more thought into the deal than Roderick did. Like,
Absolutely.
she really thought about what it would mean if she had children, and she wasn't going to do that to herself.
I'll say, too, about Madeline in the scene where they make the deal, she very clearly, to me, was... like,
are you sure on the fence?
Yeah, she did not seem very gung-ho about it and just went with it because Roderick did, which I thought was an interesting choice.
Right. But really, she's my favorite secondary character because she finally makes it upstairs, partially mummified, with those sapphire jewels in her eyes.
Oh, my gosh.
All just to kill her brother, who, for the record, told her she would be a queen and live forever. Okay. So I did do some research, and I learned that even though the queen he's talking about, and I'm going to really butcher some of these names, and I'm very sorry, but it's Queen Tusret that's mentioned in the show, and she was indeed a historical figure, but there's nothing about sapphire jewels in her lore that aid with immortality. She is, however, one of the very few queens that are buried in the Valley of Kings. So there's a Valley of Queens and a Valley of Kings, and she is buried there because she did rise to power as a pharaoh.
Oh, that's awesome.
Good for you, girl.
I was hoping that she was buried with something cool to connect it to the show, but I couldn't really find anything. It's like one of those weird things where I'm like, where did this come from? I did, however, find a cool article about the Egyptian afterlife essentials, and I've linked that in my show notes. So apparently there are 10 essentials that one should take with them to the afterlife, aka be buried with, right, in your tomb. Number 1 is obvious. It's food and furniture. The idea was if you got it, take it with you so that your soul can be comfortable in the afterlife. Number 2 is amulets, which were worn for good luck and protection, and they were carved in all kinds of different animals and like symbolic fixtures, and you would just wear those for protection. The third essential afterlife item is a scarab amulet, which I said earlier we see Verna place on Tamerlane's gravestone. So that is a little bit of a call out. These were placed on the deceased person's heart to help with them. To help them be reborn, essentially.
Oh.
So the scarab amulet was often inscribed with spells from the Book of the Dead to prevent the heart from telling the truth during the weighing of the heart ceremony.
Oh.
So you could be like, no, I didn't kill anyone. Let me into the heavenly afterlife or whatever.
I'm a really good person.
Right. So I guess if you couldn't afford the scarab amulet, then you were just like, well, you're going to hell. Sorry.
Hope you were good.
Right. Next, we have funerary figures that are called shabtis. These were added to the tomb to help with duties or work. So they would actually be carved in like the type of work they were trying to do. I said duties. Christ.
Sorry.
I was fine until Whitney lost it.
So tell me a little bit about your duties.
Tell me you have a 6-year-old at home. Without telling me.
I don't.
Sorry.
I'm the 6-year-old.
I forgot who I was talking to.
I'm so sorry.
That was
helps
awful.
with the
You're not
duties.
that sorry. Yeah. And so to help with the dead person's duties, you have funerary figures called shaptis or chaptis. Number 5, and this was to show someone's wealth and power, and that was jewelry, a very simple one, right? Now, if you think that your organs stay behind on this earthly plane of existence, you would be wrong. As soon as you died, the liver, lungs, stomach, and intestines were placed in canopic jars, and that's how they were preserved. So they were buried with you. I'm like, oh, my lungs are right over there. Let me go get them and shove them back in. Like that's
very odd.
Yeah. And of course, we all know that the journey to the afterlife is a long one. So entertainment was added to the tomb in the form of games or musical instruments.
Oh, that's funny.
So that you had something to do.
So not want to be bored in death.
Right.
Yeah.
So they had these ritualistic sunboats that were formed for the funeral procession. So even though the person stayed in the tomb, the funeral procession would start at the deceased person's home, and it went across the Nile River to the cemetery, even though the person stayed. So it's just like, I think something for the family, probably.
Yeah.
And what good tomb is there without a mummy? Folks were mummified in a lifelike manner so that their body would be ready for rebirth. So the whole thing was like, we need to make sure that they're there for rebirth.
Yeah.
And finally, we have the Book of the Dead. This book carried spells and instructions on how to get to the afterlife. And I don't know how you all feel, but isn't death supposed to be like peaceful? I have to carry all this shit, including my own food
And furniture.
Right. Follow an instruction manual to find the afterlife, and it's a long journey. And there's still people around me that need to do the work to get me there.
Right.
It sounds really fucking exhausting.
It does.
I know.
Like,
Yeah.
just let me rest in peace, man.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I just want to lay here. Like, just where no one's around me. I finally got the quiet that I wanted in my life.
You know, while you were starting that, I was thinking the only thing I know about like the Egyptian afterlife is from the movie The Mummy from 1999.
Which is part of your lore.
Which is part of my lore for real, but almost all of that is in the movie. Like,
So
Interesting.
I was thinking about the fact that I feel like kids that were in elementary school in the 90s know a lot about Egyptian culture, because like the whole thing about like King Tut was really huge. And then do you remember Geraldo Rivera was trying to go into tombs on his show?
Oh,
He
yeah.
tried to find like Al Capone's tomb, and it was like empty on live TV.
it was Al Capone's safe.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So like poor guy, he was trying to like find all these discoveries, but I feel like in the 90s, like in
it was a
the school, it was like a thing.
Yeah.
The late
Yeah.
80s, too. Did you all ever have to read the Egypt Game?
No.
It was actually a really cute book. It's about a set of like 4 kids, and they play this Egypt game, and like one of them is Cleopatra. And I honestly don't remember how it ends up, but I remember learning a lot about mummification and just different like that culture in that book.
And then Brendan Fraser was a badass, and then they're like,
Yeah.
okay, the time of the mummy is over. We can't top this.
Yeah, it was good. Although they tried.
They
Tom
did.
Cruise.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
ooh.
Tom Cruise.
That was their first. That was their first
Tom
mistake.
Cruise ain't no Brendan Fraser.
For real.
I just gotta
That's so
say.
true. Well, were you guys left with any questions still?
Well, I have one for you guys. What item would you take into the afterlife with you if you got to take one item? I'm putting you all completely on the
Yeah.
spot. I'll tell you what mine is while you're thinking. It would be my Kindle.
Yeah.
And a charger.
I was thinking.
Yeah.
A Kindle that stays charged. How's that?
Yeah, I would want a book or Robbie.
If I die, you're going to.
You're coming with me.
Well, I want Brian to stay alive and take care of my children.
My kids are self-sufficient. My 6-year-old, she'll be fine.
Yeah,
I think I would have to have a Kindle or my phone or some kind of entertainment.
Yeah.
I don't care about my phone. I don't need the internet. I don't need any of that shit. I just want to be able to read.
But see, I can read on my phone.
Even if it is
and play games.
Even if it was only the books up until my death, there have been millions of books written, right? You
True.
could read the entire afterlife.
That is true.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
I would enjoy that.
Yeah.
That's canon.
So when I'm buried, put my Kindle in my coffin with me.
Yeah.
With a charger, please.
With the charger, yeah. Can't forget the charger.
But also, I'm really wondering when there's going to be another Mike Flanagan show.
Yeah.
There's
It's been a while.
There's nothing on the radar right now.
I was going to say, it doesn't seem like there's anything in the works as of right now.
No. Boo.
Or not far enough along to say that there's something in the works.
Yeah.
Mindy, do you have any questions?
I just had that one question about Annabelle Lee because I wasn't completely certain about how she killed herself or did she what anyways. Yeah. But I think we kind of talked through that.
Yeah. I don't really have any questions, which I was pleased with because I thought that I might be like, wait, what about this? What about that? But I thought this was a really well done finale and a well done series. And I just really like showing the pointlessness of greed and hoarding so much for yourself because everybody dies and they have nothing.
They have nothing.
Right? You can't take it with you.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
I don't know. If you're Egyptian, you can.
Well, in the show. In the show, they die, and it's just, that's it.
Roderick has taken all of his prized possessions to the basement to be with Madeline. He's he, in his craziness, has thought through what she's going to need.
It's sweet in a weird way.
In a very psychotic, broken way.
It's sweet in a weird way. But yeah, I really liked that. August, the ending of August being I got my family at home, I'm good, right? Look how everything turned out for you.
Well, at one point, Annabelle Lee looks at Roderick when her ghost is there and she said, I see the poverty in you.
Yes. I loved
which is
that
a
line.
great insult.
Yes.
And which that whole thing with Dupin saying that at the end brings full circle.
Yes.
You know what we didn't talk about was Madeline's big speech while they're drinking about basically blaming all the victims.
Yeah, it's not our fault.
It's not our fault.
Right.
Yeah.
We didn't make them take the medicine.
The same thing that...
The weird thing, though, is what she said made sense.
I mean, yes.
In some respects.
not really, though, because with the Ligadone, they tell people it's not addictive.
Right.
Well, yeah, no, I'm not talking about that and the victim blaming at all, but there's some parts of it as far as consumerism is concerned where she's not wrong.
Right.
They do so many great analogies on capitalism in this show.
They really do.
I will never forget that whole Lemon speech from a few episodes ago about how to make them seem very exclusive and high end, and they're just fucking lemons.
Yeah.
You know what I thought was really interesting? Thinking about Madeline talking about the consumerism. I realized watching the finale that all these times throughout these episodes that we've seen Roderick tell August, it's not my pill, it's not my drug, it's not my fault, it's not my fault. He has already had Verna give him all the stats, show him all the bodies. That's already happened.
So he's still denying it.
And he's still not getting it.
Even after he's seen all the bodies rain down.
Right. He's still saying, well, it's not because of me. I didn't do that. It's bro.
So I will say, Mindy, maybe it was at the concert that you went with me to Muse, but at one of the Muse concerts, one of their album covers there's a guy looking up and the shadows coming down from the sky are bodies. And when they open that show, it's a huge screen and it's just shadows of bodies.
I think that was the one that we went to.
It was dark except for that screen. And it was not scary, but again, beautifully
creepy,
done. But
though.
you're also
Yeah.
where are all those bodies coming from?
Yeah.
Now we know it was Ligadone.
It was Ligadone, yeah. Is there anything else about the show before we get into our nerdiest thing of the week?
No, I don't have anything else.
Well, I can get us started with the nerdiest thing of the week. I have to correct myself from last week. Last episode, I said Samuel Taylor Coleridge was the poet that Poe was feuding with that you told us about the first episode.
Oh, yeah,
maybe?
it was Longfellow.
Yeah, it was not.
Well, I totally went with it.
Corrections
Wah, wah.
Oh, well.
So my bad. But my actual nerdy thing, while I was looking up different ideas for this week's cocktail, I don't know how I have not had this come up in my results until this week, but this Poe Speakeasy came up for me on Instagram they're in the show notes if you want to go check them out. There are apparently a traveling tour group that puts on some kind of show about Edgar Allan Poe.
Are they coming anywhere near us?
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't write that part down, and I forgot to double check. But they have.
What kind of drinking friend are you?
They have like 3 or 4 maybe special, Poe themed cocktails, and then this like whole show where they have different characters. It was kind of hard to tell from their Instagram what exactly it is the show is about, but it's something to do with Edgar Allan Poe, and I thought it was really cool.
It's like that one we went to where it was like wizarding cocktails, but
That's
it had
what I
nothing
thought
to
of
do
too.
with Harry Potter,
Yeah.
and it was just like a chick with big tits being funny. Like it was very entertaining,
It
and
was.
we did get a good buzz.
It
but
seems
like,
more legitimately like Poe themed
Yes.
than that.
This girl was in like a really short Slytherin skirt, and like
Yeah.
it was more about like fucking with people in the audience.
Yeah.
They like put a suction cup
It was
dildo on
funny.
the old guy's forehead and stuff. It was great, but it was not Harry Potter,
No.
which is what they made it sound like.
Yeah, but that it popped. I don't know how it hasn't come up in all the research we've been doing before this last episode.
If
but
you ever
there
find
go.
yourself in the Charleston area, we stayed in Isle of Palms one year, and the only restaurant I wanted to go to, and of course nobody wanted to go to it because my kids don't eat anything, but I made them go anyways. And then my oldest had a panic attack while we were there, so it ruined the whole experience for me. But it was a wonderful place. It's called Poe's Tavern, and it's all like Poe themed. It's like more of like I guess it's like a bar and grill type fare as far as food's concerned, but it was a really, really cool atmosphere. So,
well, if we're talking about Poe related places, there is a place in Port Huron where we took the kids for fall break last year, and it's called The Raven, and it's a coffee and like sandwich shop, and it was really cool.
Yeah.
fun.
So
So
all
yeah,
kinds of places you can go to.
you can
cool.
still celebrate Poe
and
even
all
after.
his weirdness.
Yeah, I'm looking at their website right now to see if I can find if it's coming. So it says the event takes place inside a dark speakeasy where 4 of his most famous stories are retold and reimagined by their Poe historians.
Interesting. Okay.
So,
I wonder if
very cool.
it's that same company.
I don't know. It might
As
be.
long as it doesn't have a Matrix guy leading the charge.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, who knows? But
Mindy, did you already
yeah.
say yours?
I didn't. So I've pretty much been a slug all week, not doing anything. I'm not going to work. I'm not doing anything. I'm just resting after surgery. So the nerdiest thing I've done is use a Kindle stand and a remote so I can read without having to hold anything.
Hey, you know I do that every day.
I'm
But
like,
here's the thing: after your shoulder heals, it will not go away. It's the best thing
I am
ever.
sold. It is amazing. Like seriously, it's not expensive either.
No, it's not. So Mindy's using hers post surgery. I use mine because I can't grip my Kindle with RA. But I don't care if you don't have anything going on. Invest in this for yourself because you can use your remote under the fucking covers.
That's where I was going to go. Like it is. Yes, it's life changing because I just like snuggle up under my covers,
Nice and cozy.
nice and cozy. And it's so funny though.
But I don't know which one you got. So the first one I got, the little arm attached to the bed, and like it would get like out of shape. And
mine's like a full stand.
Yeah, mine's a full stand too. So you want one that like stands on the floor.
Yeah.
So
It's
that way,
got like an articulating arm,
Yep.
and you can like put it exactly like where you want it in front of your face. Darren used to know that I was falling asleep when I would drop my Kindle. He doesn't know I'm asleep anymore, and he has to ask me. He's like, "Are you asleep?"
I was.
So Brian knows if my gummies kicked in for if he comes in and my face doesn't leave like reading my Kindle, because normally I'll like look at him and I'll be like, hey. Or actually I'm more like but
I'm in a good part.
right,
Don't talk to me.
But he knows that my gummies fully kicked in if I don't even move.
Yeah.
Well, so this week we actually helped some friends open their single barrel whiskey tasting room.
Ooh.
The whiskey is called Left Bank, and you can visit their tasting room actually right here in Louisville. But I'm super excited about all their success. But I made some really large wall decals. They have like this
cool,
mythical
yeah.
character that they use for their whiskey. So I made those, and like we went to like their soft opening, and it was really, really fun.
Cool.
It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
That's
it's at
awesome.
Logan Street Market if you're in the Louisville area, you ever want to go there. It's like an open food stall arcade type of place. Yeah, it's really fun.
That's awesome. Where is that?
Logan Street Market.
Yeah.
It's over in like Schnitzelberg, isn't it, Mindy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what that means.
I'll take you there sometime. They have a great like bar and like a really great coffee bar too.
It's like I've lived here for years and still I'm like, I've never heard
It was
of
one of
this.
those places that opened right before COVID.
Yeah.
And then like I think it's kind of finally gaining traction again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That messes with a lot of things. Well, Stay tuned for the next 2 weeks, listeners. We'll have some author interviews. And then in 3 weeks, we will be starting Scythe and Sparrow by Brynne Weaver. We're going to be talking about the first 4 chapters, Ace of Cups through Prairie Princess. See you then.
Bye. Like what you heard in this episode? Follow Our Nerdiest Thing on Instagram at instagram.com/Our Nerdiest Thing or Facebook at facebook.com/Our Nerdiest Thing. We love hearing from fellow nerds. Email us at ournerdiestthing@gmail.com.